Yes. Okay, everybody sing from the beginning. I've been to Romamu, I've been to BJ. I searched all over for a place to pray. I found the mosh pit and knew that this was it. I am a moshnik and I'm here to stay. And I'm really turning gray. I found community that is in tune with me. Unbelievable. Singing and dancing in our Zoom agog, which is really one word, by the way. Some contemplation mixed with elation. I am a moshnik and I'm here to stay. Hey, there's my sister Ellen. And I'm turning gray, aren't we all? A chance to meet you, a chance to greet you, a time to deepen what it means to belong. So let's have some fun tonight and spread some joy and light. I am a moshnik and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning gray. Apologies to Neil Young. Here comes the Hop solo. Hop jamming all of his Woodstock friends, Hendrix and who else? Oh yeah, okay. All right, thank you very much. Hi everybody, look, Reb Sarah's here and Rachel is here. Oh, okay, now we're ready to go. Well, I have landed, the Eagle has landed. And I left last Monday and returned on Sunday. My trip back was a lot longer than my trip there, only because I had to leave Costa Rica at 5 a.m. from our retreat center, which, unbeknownst to us, until a few days before, was 4 hours from our hotel in San Jose. And the rabbi whose synagogue, Temple Beth Zion, or otherwise known as TBZ in Brookline, Mass, she was sitting in the first seat, and every once in a while she would stand up and say, "It'll be worth it when we get there, you'll see." And that's part of what I'm going to share with you this evening. Feel free to interrupt me at any time with any questions or comments. Has anybody ever been to Costa Rica? Janice and Susan and Reb Sarah too. So you know what a magical place it is. But I went to the magical of the magical, and you're going to see some of that, and I will tell you even more about it than the slides will do justice to. I actually took very, very few photos on the retreat. That was intentional. But I'm going to get into the intention that I went to the retreat with. But I want to share with you first, hey Marlena and Scott, I want to share with you first a poem by John O'Donohue. You know, I'm a big fan of John O'Donohue's. And this poem actually was given to us by one of the leaders of the retreat, Rabbi Marcello Bronstein, in the first session that we had. And since Bina is here, I can now share the poem with you. Every time you leave home, another road takes you into a world you were never in. New strangers on other paths await. New places that have never seen you will startle a little at your entry. Old places that know you well would pretend nothing changed since your last visit. When you travel, you find yourself alone in a different way, more attentive now to the self you bring along, your more subtle eye watching you abroad, and how what meets you touches that part of the heart that lies low at home. How you unexpectedly attune to the timbre in some voice opening in conversation you want to take into where your longing has pressed hard enough inward on some unsaid dark to create a crystal of insight you could not have known you needed to illuminate your way. When you travel, a new silence goes with you. And if you listen, you will hear what your heart would love to say. A journey can become a sacred thing. Make sure before you go to take the time to bless your going forth, to free your heart of ballast so that the compass of your soul might direct you toward the territories of spirit where you would discover more of your hidden life and the urgencies that deserve to claim you. May you travel in an awakened way. Gather wisely into your inner ground that you may not waste the invitations which wait along the way to transform you. May you travel safely, arrive refreshed, and live your time away to its fullest. Return home more enriched and free to balance the gifts of days which call you.
Mm.
Yeah, beautiful, isn't it? So, this is the poem that awaited me when I got to the retreat center. And there's somebody who I need to mute. There you go. I went to the retreat, and actually there's going to be a prologue to getting at to the retreat. But I want to share with you what my intention was. First of all, I want to thank you all for sending me. I probably would not have done it otherwise. This whole thing began when someone had the idea, let's send Rabbi Mark and Renee to the James Taylor concert. And apparently there was money left over. Um, so what am I going to do with it? It's all mine to use, to spend it on myself. So what you might not know is a friend of ours, Elise, her husband Doug saw an advertisement for the retreat in Facebook, and Doug told his wife Elise, and Elise called Renee and said to Renee, "You want to go with me?" And Renee said, "Well, I've always wanted to go to Costa Rica, but a meditation retreat, that's not my thing. But you can ask Mark." And sure enough, when I found out that who was leading the retreat, it was immediate, I'm gone. And I'd never been to Costa Rica, and now I owe Renee a trip to Costa Rica, where, of course, I thought of her so many times. Renee speaks Spanish, and it's always wonderful to be with her in a place where Spanish is spoken. And every time at the retreat center, I don't have a photo of one. I don't know why I didn't take it, but the flowers there, the fauna grows. It's like on steroids, and the hydrangeas were like this big. And you've probably never seen Renee near a hydrangea, but she likes to pet them. And so that's part of the story of Renee being with me all during the trip. So I want to introduce you to some people who were with me on the trip. First of all, on the airplane, I sat next to these two young women. The young woman in the middle, her name is Joanna, and I had to try a couple of times to pronounce her name. And the young woman nearest the window, that's Estelle. And I didn't find out till later that it was Estelle's birthday. When I sat down, we shared niceties, hi, but you never know about who you're going to be sitting next to, right? Well, it turns out that they live about 40 miles from Amsterdam. And of course, I asked them if they knew Laura, but of course, they never were going to know Laura, who was in Amsterdam. That was not happening. But after the niceties were exchanged, Joanna noticed my kippah underneath. I was wearing my hat at first. You see, I have my baseball. No, it's my kala hat. And she asked about it. Well, that question lent itself to a conversation that lasted easily 2.5 hours. They both go to church, and they knew nothing of Judaism. They wanted to know, They were totally perplexed about the fact that Jesus was not my savior. We got into conversations about sin. We got in conversations of the difference that I see between belief and faith or sensing God. We got into conversations about the G word. I want to tell you that these conversations got so deep and so intimate that there was a moment when the three of us were in tears. There was a sacred, just touching of hearts in there. I invited them to be in touch, and I really hope that they are, and that maybe they would come to Moshe one day. It was such a wonderful way to start the trip in this really what was a holy conversation with these two young women. They were going to be traveling together for 3 weeks in Costa Rica. They were renting a car and just going. So the first day, well, let me back up here for a second. So I stayed at the Courtyard Marriott, the hotel, the airport Courtyard Marriott, which is one of the two hotels they suggested we stay at because I left on Monday. We decided, Elise and I, to go on Monday so we could do some stuff on Tuesday. But in the end, there were so many day trips we could have taken, but the ones to the volcanoes and the ones to the spas, they were all 3 hours away. And since we were going to be traveling 4 hours away on Wednesday, that was like, I found a different kind of way to spend our Tuesday, which was to go only an hour. Everything's really far from the airport. An hour cab ride to the University of San Jose, where student biologists take you on a tour of the grounds. Now, we're not talking about looking at buildings, of course, but we're talking about looking and about beautiful, beautiful birds, which I couldn't catch pictures of any of them. And in a moment, you'll see a little bit of what was growing around there. But the magical part of it that we were promised was to see a sloth. That there are sloths on campus. I should have had the picture here. We have a joke in our family years and years ago when our sons Zach and Aaron would come for the summer. Aaron, as a teenager, when we went to the zoo, he would lie down on a bench at some point of our visiting the zoo, and so we labeled him the horizontal bench sloth. Now, we didn't see any horizontal bench sloths on our trip. So here is Pablo and Elise. This was at the end of the trip. And they're giving me a good look there. So I want to share with you some of the things that we saw on the trip. First of all, actually, this is the only thing I'm going to share with you from that walk. This is the banana tree. And you can see that there's a pod that's growing underneath it. That all dies off after the bananas are picked. And so I have a question for you all that, and this is not a trick question, or what kind of way it is. Who knows, let me come back here. Who knows what the bracha is for bananas? Raise your hand. Okay, Janice, you know it automatically. So since you know it, I'm not going to call on you. Actually, what would you think it is? And then I'll call on Janice. What would you think the bracha for eating a banana is? The fruit, Scott.
The fruit of the tree?
Exactly. That. Thank you for
It's
playing along, Scott.
banana tree.
It's a banana tree, except for the fact that it's not Borei Pri Ha'etz, and the banana tree is not a tree. Janice, what bracha do we say when we eat a banana?
Borei Pri Ha'adamah.
That's right. We bless for the fruit of the earth, not for the fruit of the tree. And so that said, yes, this is the bracha that we say. Baruch atah Ya Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adamah. And I can say that blessing even though I'm not having a banana right now or any other fruit of the earth, because for educational purposes, it's not a prayer batala, it's not in vain. But let's take a look at the next thing. Bore priates. That is said for the product of a plant whose trunk remains alive and produces fruit year after year. So an apple tree and a pear tree, right? But hadama is the product, you say it, the product of a plant whose trunk withers after 1 year. The banana plant, for example, which can grow to great heights, is not regarded as a tree, since its shoots produce fruit only once and then become part of a central stem and no longer bear fruit. The bracha is ha'adama, fruit of the earth. The same is true for pineapple, and I didn't know that until I did that research. After one season, the banana bush dies and a new shoot grows in its place. Hence, a banana is halakhically considered a vegetable. And the bracha, the blessing made on the banana, is Borei Pri Ha'adama. How many of you did not know that until now? Yeah, thank you for being honest there, Roxanne and Rachel, and Bina as well, since there were balloons going off. And Jade, somebody did that this afternoon. Oh, you were Steven Silverstein. All right, so this tour lasted about 2.5 hours. We spent a lot of time. Pablo had a very nice, camera with it was a binocular, and we were watching birds flying in and out of their nests. The birds in Costa Rica are just like beautifully colored. But there was no sloth for a long time. And he said we kept on walking and walking. There was one woman with us who lives in Virginia, and she was rooming with Elise, and Elise felt we should take her with us, and she was there that day too. She could not stop talking about the need to see a sloth. And so Pablo, he would not give up until finally. So you don't see his face, but do you see the sloth in the tree? Okay, now, this is why sloth is a perfect animal in preparation for a mindfulness meditation retreat, because this is in real time. The sloth moving slowly, slowly. He's not in any hurry. Every movement is intentional. And he is certainly more present than we can ever hope to be in our lives. And so that is the sloth that we finally did see at the end of our 2.5 hours of walking. Now, there was one more sloth that I want to share with you, and here it is. These sloths are often found in the wilds of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So, I just can't help myself. Oh, wait a second. Where is the? Oh, I didn't put it on there. So now it's Wednesday morning, and our plans were to meet at 9 a.m. in front of the hotel, and we all gathered into a van. Most people came from the Boston area and Brookline, from the synagogue, like I mentioned, Beth Zion. I'm going to share you a photo of the rabbi from Beth Zion in a moment. What I didn't include here, we stopped about halfway for breakfast, and in a place where it was a big buffet, and I paid all of $4 for a breakfast that really filled me up. And behind, this is the photo that I have, but I forgot to include it here. Behind the service line where the buffet was a large wall hanging with the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments in Espanol. Like I said, Reb Claudia Kreimer, the rabbi, she kept getting up every once in a while as we continued our 4-hour journey, which did not include the break that we started from. It was actually 4 hours of driving, and the reason it was so long is because the traffic in San Jose getting out it's terrible all of the time. And then at the tail end of the trip, it was a lot of driving on very coarse roads made of boulders and pebbles, and you're going like 2 or 3 miles an hour in a van that was a stick shift, and so maneuvering through all of that was a chore. But Claudia kept on saying it's all gonna be worth it. So I wanted to introduce you to the four people. Well, actually, three people led the retreat. And the fourth person was the rabbi, who certainly had a lot to say during the retreat. Um, she was kind of hovering between being a fellow retreatnik and being the rabbi of this synagogue. So here's who the retreat was led by. First of all, Rabbi Marcello Bronstein and his wife, Karina Zilberman. Marcello, he was born in Argentina, and he went to rabbinical school in Chile, but then came to the States and went to HUC, the Reform movement, and then was one of the major movers and shakers behind the renewal of B'nai Jeshurun, BJ, in Manhattan. Now, for those of you who don't, let me just come back here. How many of you know what I'm talking about when I refer to BJ? Yeah, so if you don't know what BJ is, it was long ago a conservative shul with a big C, and it was basically dead. So he and another a rabbi, Marshall Meyer of blessed memory, basically created what was as close to a Jewish renewal experience in the Upper West Side as one could imagine, and which gave rise to the BJ experience on Friday night. If you ever go, it's more like going to a Broadway show because they got a full band and people get up. I'm not sure if what copied what, but there's a place in Lachado D where everybody always gets up, because I've been there several times, and then everybody dances around, et cetera, et cetera. Marcello also studied with Reb Zalman, alav shalom. And so I will say, before I forget to say, that he brought Reb Zalman in a lot. And every time he did, I was a puddle. Having Reb Zalman there, through Reb Marcello was a real gift to me. His wife Karina, they met years later. They both had been married before. Karina was a professional singer in Argentina, very successful. Came to the States in Florida, and she met Marcello in Florida. And she was the originator of what's called Shababa, which was a community building program at the 92nd Street Y. And it ended up being a very, very successful program in which young children came with their mothers or fathers or both, and their nannies. And all were included in this Shabbat happening. And other synagogues have copied basically what she founded. Then you have Rabbi Claudia, and she also is from Argentina. So 3 of the 4 leaders spoke Spanish. And if you remind me later, I'll tell you a little bit about the woman. I don't have a picture of her, whose retreat center it is, because her story is more remarkable than anything I experienced. And then we have Noah Aronson, who was the musician in residence. A lovely, lovely man, and a wonderful, wonderful musician. Okay. This is where we were. This photo is taken from the Temple of Practice, which I'm going to show you a photo of in a minute. But obviously this is approaching sunset, and this is where we davened from. This is where most of the work that we did looked out onto the mountains. And there's another picture. Everything grows big. Now, if you can picture. And actually, I did have an audio, but I didn't include it in the presentation of the birds. Any time of day, except for, of course, in the middle of the night, you can hear the birds. And at breakfast, and all during the meals, the birds would be putting on a show. Look at this. So this is taken from the walkway from the Temple of Practice to these two structures that you see in the shape of cones. One of them was the visitor center, and the second one is where we ate and had some of the programming. But you can certainly have appreciation for just everything. Like all of the plantage was davening. It's like everything was alive, singing praises all of the time. Marcello used the word pristine a lot. This is at the highest place. You can at any time you can hear the stream that runs parallel to the retreat center, which they took us down to one day. So a river runs through it. This mountain was owned at one time by one man, and I forget his name, but he's the only one who's gotten rich from all of this. And his intention before he started selling off parts of the mountain to various people who were interested was that it remained the pristine area that it was. But not only that the people that he sold it to had an intention to preserve the land and to do programming, if that's what they were going to be doing, or projects that would give life back to the land without taking anything from it. I'm going to show you photos in a few moments of a house that we went to, friends of Marcello and Karina that basically lived a kilometer away. But let's continue here, and I will continue to show you where we were. So this was the where we ate, the entranceway to the Makola, and you can see what care everything was taken to beautify what was already a beautiful place, right? So the roof is bamboo, and there's a chuppah, right? That archway is like a wedding canopy, and as we get closer to it, you see the flowers that are growing from the canopy. And so entering it to eat every time we did so, it was like coming under the chuppah. This is the room. And so we would sit for breakfast. We had silent breakfast. It was not a silent retreat. It wasn't fully a meditation retreat in the classic sense. It was a mindful meditation retreat. So there was more talking there than there was silence throughout the retreat, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But the food was all the food was local. And so all the fish was local, not grown, not from their property, but most of the food that we ate was farmed right there at the retreat center. And this was the welcoming where we had tea and coffee. Of course, Costa Rica is famous for its coffee, but the tea, if you wanted tea, you made your own from any number of assorted herbs that you would put into the empty cup. And then you had ginger and cinnamon you can see there, and there's some lemongrass as well. And then you had various kinds of mint and rosemary. So making your fresh cup of tea was literally from herbs that might have been picked that morning. By the way, everything was done with such care and to beautify every moment of our visit that even the toilet paper was done with that kind of intention, meaning that the toilet paper that was still in a roll, tucked inside the end, was a flower. And I think I have a picture of me with some of the flowers that had fallen onto the ground. So we'll get to that in a second. Ah, this is the roof of those two towers. I would suspect that from the floor to that roof was at least 50 feet. I mean, you can get some idea from this photograph of just like how awe-inspiring the roof of this building was. Now, the temple of practice was not in one of these, but rather it was a more common kind of ceiling. All right, enjoying some of the foliage. I mean, and I don't know the names of these. I could have taken out my phone, but I was really trying not to use my phone at all, even to identify plants. You see how just vivacious, how sparkling. The colors are just amazing of all of these plants. Here, this is an iris, and another one. And here, like I told you, these flowers, which were in back of me, every day there would be some on the floor, and so I would tuck them into my name tag. I was, by the way, the only person who right away or at all decorated my name tag. I mean, I think I get that from Judith Dack. You know, if you know Judith, you can't help but want to decorate your name tag. And if you remember last year at the retreat, I think we had, pencils and colored markers out to decorate. And here's a picture a little bit closer of the flower that I didn't know someone, I went, some of these pictures that I'm sharing with you, some of the photos are on the TBC Google photo page that people uploaded photos to as of today. And I was unaware that somebody had walked by the chair that I sat in that day at the Temple of Practice and had put my name tag down for a moment, and they took a photograph of it. I'm really grateful that they did. And you can get a picture of the flowers tucked in there. I also took some of those flowers that had fallen on the ground and I filled a cup of water in my room, and they did great. They really looked much happier in that water, and they lasted the entire trip, the entire visit time that I was there. Before I move into what things look like from the Temple of Practice, I want to get back to my intention for the trip. So I set myself with this kavanah. The kavanah was that I was going to release any obligations that I had. That I didn't need to take care of anyone but myself. That I was going to do tzimtzum. That I was going to not talk when things arose. At every impulse I had to share, whatever wisdom arose. And there was plenty. Because there were plenty of opportunities where Rabbi Marcello, as we were unpacking, for instance, Moda Ani, right, on Thursday morning. And he offered it as a chant, and then he backed up, and we took one little part of it at a time. In the same way that I would teach, which was so delicious that that the time I was there, I felt, did I learn anything new? Yes, maybe a couple of things, but it was such an affirmation of everything I knew and the teacher I am and the rabbi I aspire to be. And all the times that that things rose, and I thought to myself, I don't have to say that. Even when it wasn't underscored, even when the teaching was not given over by either Marcello or Karina or Claudia for that matter, and I thought it would be a wonderful thing to share. And I think that really lent itself to my returning. Devorah has remarked a couple of times that I look refreshed. In the way that I've returned and bringing it back with me, of not having felt that I needed to do anything for anyone other than myself, and for me to be taken care of. There was no community to hold. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience that I had, and it really paid off. Here's a shot from inside the Temple of Practice. And it's just again another beautiful space. As you see on the right hand side, there was a bell that at the end of meditation period. So we started off each morning with meditation for a half hour, which led into a mindful physical movement in order to draw energy into our bodies. And then we had breakfast and then returned for morning davening. When I say morning davening, I'm really talking about what were, for the most part, chanting experiences in which there was ample opportunity to unpack what we were chanting and people to sharing things all along. So this is where we were looking out on that space. Ah, so here you go. Nice, huh? And this is outside of the Temple of Practice. It was chilly at night. And so in the morning, when we gathered at 7 a.m., um, it was chilly. And so you had to dress accordingly. But they supplied blankets for everyone. So I would be there meditating, wrapped up in a blanket, which and a lot of other people were as well. Ah, I don't want to go there yet. Okay, let me stop here for a second and says to ask if any of you have any questions or reflections or would like me to touch on something that I haven't touched on yet, given what I've shared with you. Okay, yeah, Devorah.
I'll just say I feel really calm listening to all of this, as if we're there. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I have to tell you that I had once or twice I had this thought, wow, maybe Renee and me and Shulamit should lead a storytelling retreat there. But I just don't know, if we can actually get people to do what we did to get there. Getting there is a chore. And there's a lot of other wonderful retreat centers a lot closer than this.
But
But
I'm
just, but,
willing. I
but,
just wanted you to know I'm willing.
yeah,
And
okay,
Shulamit and I would go.
okay, note taken. Um, part of a big part of the experience was how clean the air was and how quiet the space was and the singing of the birds. I was a little surprised that the musician didn't know that there was a nigun called the nigun of the birds, but he had a lot of other wonderful music. Um, yeah, somebody else had their hand up.
Judy.
Yeah, Judy, go ahead.
So I missed the first couple of minutes, but you've mentioned mindfulness meditation. So was there a Buddhist aspect to this, or was it really focused on the renewal kinds of themes?
Yes. There's a Buddhist aspect to all kinds of all kind of meditation and mindfulness meditation included. And just as Reb Zalman was steeped in, in practices from other faith traditions or not. I mean, Buddhist is not another faith, but practices that many paths, one river, and so yeah, so it was steeped as you might. Clea taught, Clea Bassing, when she was with us, she taught mindfulness meditation, which she learned from Tara Brach, or sometimes it's called insight meditation, right?
Right.
Which is which can be very different in its intention from a more generalized meditation practice or a different kind of meditation practice, right? Some of which the focus of share some of the same things, but in mindfulness meditation, you're paying attention to the thoughts that arise All right. And you are non-judgmentally looking at those thoughts and allowing them to pass through as you would watch clouds float on a blue sky. Noting them for later as to why certain things arise. And then that's your spiritual work, which is oftentimes based on the things that are holding you from being totally present. So we experience that in quote unquote Jewish, mindful Jewish meditation, Jewish mindfulness meditation, which has its roots in other practices of Buddhist meditation. And I mean, look at the most famous practitioners are all Jubus, you know. And so, I know, Carol, you lead meditation. So, this is not surprising, for you to hear. And oftentimes, what's his name? Jack Kornfield, he studied with Reb Marcello. And of course, all the same, the big shots at, Rachel Cowan, the rabbi. All these people who are who found themselves more embedded in the Buddhist meditation world. They're all, so many of them are Jews, which is not surprising. Of course, some people, lots of searchers didn't find what they needed to find on the Jewish path, right? Hey, listen, I didn't find what I needed to find until I met all of our wonderful Jewish renewal teachers and friends, and now my colleagues. So I was fortunate because I could have just easily found myself on that path. Did that answer your question, Judy?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Let me see what's next. Okay. So I did mention to you that so Thursday we got there on Wednesday, and Wednesday afternoon we had introduction to the teachers and to the place, and then Wednesday night we had a davening, prayer session, and then Thursday morning as well. And so Thursday was filled with song, with teachings, with prayer practices, with silent breakfast. There wasn't enough silence for me. I mean, I wish that other meals had been silent as well, but it was okay. And one thing that I had a little trepidation about going into this a retreat, which was a synagogue retreat, with a lot of people. From 14 out of the 18 people were from the synagogue. And so a little trepidation over people, knowing each other and, getting into small talk. But that really didn't happen. And as it turns out, it's a 500 member shul. And so there were a number of people who actually didn't know each other at all. They knew each other's faces. And so that all worked out fine. On Friday it was Friday late morning after davening, after breakfast and then davening, we went on an outing. Reb Marcello and Karina have friends who live about a kilometer away. I mentioned that before. Now, these friends are both, it's a couple who are artists who had a retreat center in Costa Rica for 15 years. And one day they realized they didn't want to do the retreat center anymore, so they bought a piece of land on this mountain. As the story goes, on this piece of land, when they bought it, everybody laughed at them. These foolish Americans. Because the land was literally all rocks and boulders, right? So I forget their names, but the fella, very industrious, he bought himself like a bulldozer. Yeah, right? Small bulldozer that you see at at work sites, and he learned how to use it, without killing himself. And they built, and I'm about to show you this home, and all of which came from wood that was found or gathered from construction sites of buildings that had been knocked down, including the floors and everything, the windows. They were all collected from different places. You cannot cut down fresh forests anymore in Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, the intention is so hyper eco-conscious. So this is the home that they built. Now, if you look to the bottom right of your picture, you're going to see a small pond. And now you're going to see that small pond a little bit, a lot better. And you see that there's a hot tub. But that small pond we later used for a mikveh. But not all of us used that small pond. Some of us used the large. Oh, that's the women in the small. There were 4 guys on the retreat. So these are some of the women on the retreat in the small pond. And then in the larger pond, many people used that as well. You see there was a difference between the color of the water, which was more crystal clear here, and the larger pond right there. This small pond was fed by a stream that ran from the back of the house up the mountain. So they fed the stream through pipes, right? And they had it going under the house. I'm telling you, this is like Gan Eden, right? Living in the Garden of Eden. And there that is again. Another picture from inside the house. Oh, yes. And they could swim. This was much deeper than the pond in the upper pond. Well, and it was a gorgeous day that I did my mikveh in. So the leaders, Marcello and Karina, they brought laminated brachot for doing mikveh. And it's nothing like doing mikveh in the great outdoors. You know, it's one thing to go to Addis Israel or a, indoor mikveh, but when Renee and I got married, like the day before, we went with friends out into the country, and it's just like nothing like it. This is the inside of the house. Me and Noah and the woman, and she does a lot of leather work, and that's what her medium is. And I mean, just look at this room. I mean, the Pesach Seder that they could have there, you could sit at least 25 people. It's stretched so far. Look at the windows and just how with such care everything is given into the building of this house. So we had lunch here. No, I'm sorry. We did mikveh here, and then we moved here for lunch. So what you're looking at is a little bridge that is overlooking. You see that? It's overlooking water-fed pipes with water going into an upper place with baby trout. This was a trout farm where we were taken for lunch. Now, I didn't take a picture of the meal. I should have, but every person got a whole deep-fried trout, which was delish, which I found out later would have cost me $10. So this was the end of the outing, and it was a lot of fun. And so in the lower, I don't have a picture of it, but in the lower part underneath so the water went underneath a different structure where we had lunch, and that fed into a lower pool where the trout got bigger with every pool. Pretty good, huh? So these people too, who had the trout farm, they went about this intentionally, that they knew they wanted to do something that made use of the natural resources and what would add to the beauty and the cultural aspects of the place. And so they built this trout farm, and it was really great. So that's Friday afternoon. We came back and we got changed for dinner. Everybody dressed in white. I don't have a picture of us all dressed in white because I missed that photo. And if you're still here, Janice had to go, I guess. I was going to ask Janice to Photoshop me into that photo because only I know Janice knows the magic of how to do that. Friday night, of course, all dressed in white for a couple of Shabbat, just like we do at Moshe. And then Shabbos was really laid back. We had a lovely 3-hour and 15-minute service. And Shabbos afternoon, more learning until Shabbos evening, a fire pit for Havdalah. You can see me right there in the middle. I was in charge of feeding the fire, and I came away from Havdalah all smoky. There, my friends, is the fire, and beyond that is a giant bowl that they prepared for us with bisamim, of flowers and lotus. What was all different kinds of things to smell. As you can see, it was a delicious time that I had. I don't think there were any other. So there's a closer look at that tray. So all different kinds of herbs and spices and just beautifying that whole bisamim tray. Well, there's the Kiddush cup is on there too. And Reb Claudia, she's the original party animal. She was like the Energizer Bunny. She did not stop, and she danced up a storm. Her congregation has grown, like from the beginning of COVID, from 350 to 500 members. If ever I have the chance to be in Brookline, I would certainly go. This was the first few days of her sabbatical. She was taking a 4-month sabbatical, and afterwards she was headed to spend a week with Marcello and with Karina, because Marcello was one of her teachers. And so they're very, very close. And so she was going to spend, I'm sorry that she was facing away, but I didn't take this picture. You can see me, I'm underneath her left elbow. I think that's it. Yeah. Okay. And that's it. That's my Costa Rica experience. Like I said, it was everything that I had hoped for in coming away with. I'm kind of happy that what I didn't come away with was, and I wasn't so interested, with some new songs, yeah, maybe some material to use. But I was looking to renew, and I was so depleted when I left. Maybe some of you kind of like saw that happening, especially since October 7th. But, when we started this journey together nearly 4 years ago, and by the way, Meira, I found in my email, as I was going through emails, getting rid of stuff, the email that I sent out that you shared, was it last year? About that email, the original email that I sent out to people, inviting them to come join us, on Zoom. And it's been almost 4 years.
For 2 months. We were going to do it for 2 months, Mark.
Yeah, right. Who knew? Who knew how long it was going to go? And, this is an impossible thing to explain to anyone. It's like Paris. And I'm not talking about Costa Rica. I'm talking about the Zumagog. I think that we've gotten a good taste of it with the new website, with Rick and Jay's help. We've put something very nice together. The intention behind it being of someone who knew nothing about us, who just stumbled. Ask me about my Zumagog. Thank you, Devorah. Somebody who knows nothing about us, who maybe was told about us or stumbled upon us, from a Google search, to come to the website and, just for their, curiosity to be tickled. I think that we've accomplished that. By the way, I invited all the people who were on the retreat to come and check us out. Now, of course, they're TBZ members, but some of them are Friday night TBZ goers. And so maybe they'll come and check us out. Renee and I, when I'm gone in a couple of weeks, Janice and Carl are going to be leading, because Renee and I are doing our first Scholar in Residence program since the beginning of COVID at a synagogue in Needham, Massachusetts, Temple Aliyah. I posted something about that on my Facebook page today for those of you who are on Facebook. If you know anybody up there near Needham, we're going to be leading services and doing concerts and leading workshops. So the week I'm going to have off, I won't be on retreat. I'll be working. But it's doing something that we love to do, and haven't had an opportunity since I've been a little busy the past 4 years building this amazing adventure with you. and for that I'm grateful. But a week from now, I intend to, if I can really put some more thought into it, my annual State of the Minion address, which I'll talk a little more in depth about where we've been, where we are, and perhaps where we're going. And who knows, maybe Costa Rica. Or maybe someplace else. Who knows what we have in store. So I'm going to stop here. Mel, welcome. If anybody has any thoughts, questions, there's no halacha that we have to go until 8:45 every Wednesday night. See if there's anything else that I want to share with you. I had a lovely one-on-one. I asked Rabbi Marcello for alone time, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to talk to him about, but I just wanted some alone time with the Rebbe, and he'd been calling me Rebbe since I got there because he knew I was a rabbi. What he didn't know was that I was, a musmach, an ordinary of Reb Zalman. And that was like an instant connection, that we made. And so when we sat, at first I wanted to ask him about Reb Zalman and what he learned from Reb Zalman. But then it got into kind of a conversation that was based upon a book that I am now, to say I'm reading it would be an overstatement, but it's one of those kinds of books that you can open to any page and glean something from it and then meditate on it. So the name of this book was, actually, I was referred to it by Rabbi Shefa Gold, who asked me to get it so she'd have somebody to talk about it with. Reb Shefa and I are on the faculty of the Hashpa'ah, the spiritual direction program of Aleph, and she came upon this book. It's called A Walk in the Physical. And the basis of the book is as a guy, just a guy who had an experience of pre-birth, in which he remembers. And he remembers before he even came into this physical life, being with a team of guides. And that he didn't have to return to the physical plane. And apparently you don't have to return. But of course, it pays to return if you have some tikkun, if you have more to learn and more to repair from any previous lifetime before you hang out in Gan Eden for Le'olam Va'ed, for eternity. So I started reading this book, and there was something I came across that I opened up that page and asked Marcello about it, and we got into just a lovely, lovely conversation because the whole meditation retreat was so grounded in soul, grounded in the sense that our souls are perfect, they're tahor, like we sing, Elohai neshama shenatata bi tahorahi, the soul that you have given me is pure, and how over the course of our lifetimes, through just the process of living, we forget who we are. And that's what the mindfulness meditation, the power of any spiritual practice does, right? And that's what I hope that is what that's our mission at Moshe, that's our mission, to provide a container for us all to grow closer to the divine in a way that cleanses us, so that we can feel like we have a personal relationship with whatever we call the G word. And that's what the retreat really was all grounded in. And without, so Marcello and I went a little deeper into that. And then we walked back to have lunch together with everybody else. I was very grateful to have that time with him. And I get a little verklempt tears talking about it. There were so many moments when Reb Sandy, you're talking, but when Reb Zalman was like right there, and Sarabina, hi, and I felt guided, to this place. by you. And I'll be eternally grateful. Now, I do need to tell you that one thing that Marcello shared with us when he was at BJ, when he was at B'nai Jeshurun, the board of directors realized at some point that they needed to send their clergy to a minimum of 3 retreats yearly. They recognized that by doing so, this was not to go learn things, but that clergy, that anyone who is serving the soul and of a community need to be replenished and need to recharge. And that's what I got. you know, halavai is the word. Halavai. If I could go, twice a year on this kind of retreat, and I totally agreed, with them, and that's what I experienced. A renewal that I can now be here, fully together with you again. I don't think I can do it again for another 4 years without another retreat. Mary.
Mark, once again, I thank you for modeling for us the kind of behavior that we all need to follow. I mean, the nurturing of ourselves is huge, and so many of us, myself included, don't always take the time to do that. And the joy on your face is exciting. And I think, whoa, maybe that's what I need to do. So thanks again for showing us.
You are very welcome. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. All right. So if you don't have any other questions, I want to share with you again the John O'Donohue poem that I started out with, but it's an abridged version of it that I used for our meditation this afternoon. And I need to reach over here to grab my guitar, because we'll bid adieu to each other with the John O'Donohue poem that I put to music. I must be a couple of years already. That we end every Wednesday noon meditation with the song. Please feel free, if you have any questions or reflections that come up, share them with me. And thank you all for being with me, with each other this evening. I'm grateful. When you travel, a new silence goes with you, and if you listen, you will hear what your heart would love to say. A journey can become a sacred thing. Make sure before you go to take the time to bless your going forth, to free your heart of ballast, so that the compass of your soul might direct you toward the territories of spirit, where you will discover more of your hidden life and the urgencies that deserve to claim you. May you travel in an awakened way, gathered wisely into your inner ground, that you may not waste the invitations which wait along the way to transform you. May you travel safely, arrive refreshed, and live your time away to its fullest. Return home more enriched and free to balance the gift of days. And return home more enriched and free to balance the gift of days which call you.
Rabbi Mark,
Judy.
I would venture that for many of us here in the room, the 2 hours and 15 minutes that we spend on Shabbat morning with you is that weekly retreat and respite that helps to lift us for that next week. So we can't all get away quite in the same way, but we have that to look forward to. And I know that's how I feel when I tune in and I hear the music and the spirit.
Thank you, Judy. Before I sing the song, you reminded me of something that arose in me at the end of the retreat that I felt that I wanted to share with people, and I didn't. One thing that they didn't do, they did encourage people to take the retreat with them, right? But in a kind of a general manner. And I, as a retreat leader, would have liked them to give some specific instructions of how people could continue the work, such as Jewish teaching offers us that we should make a time, a set time, a fixed time every day for spiritual practice. For prayer is what the rabbis say, but I expand upon that, for practice. So that practice can be a sitting practice, or the practice can be davening from a siddur. But the practice can also be a walking practice. Or it can even be a practice of paying attention to how the water hits our hands when we're washing the dishes. It could be that moment of silence before we fall asleep when we say, Biado afkid ruchi v'yeti shan v'ya'ira v'im ruchi gaviyati. Adonai li v'lo ira, God is with me. Or that moment when we wake up and we say, Modeh, Moda ani. That anything that we approach intentionally is a holy opportunity for being a sacred container for divine presence. That's a perfect reminder of this week's Parsha, Teruma, where we will read Asuli Mikdash v'shechanti b'tocham. Build me a sanctuary so I shall dwell among them. Of course, another understanding is not just building the Mishkan in the desert, but building a sanctuary, a sacred place within each and every one of us. So all that together with how helpful it is to build an altar in our homes, in some little corner of a room, which serves as our outer Mishkan, a place that we can sit and automatically feel at home. You know me, if I knew the way, I would take you home. And Judy, that's what the gift that you just gave me and all of us. This is what we do every Shabbos morning, is we take each other home. I would love to live like a river flows, carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. I would love to live like a river flows carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. A river flows carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. I would love to live like a river flows carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. I would love to live like a river flows carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. A river flows carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. A river flows carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. Thank you all. I love you all. Thank you for holding me and each other in this most amazing journey that we're on together. Laila Tov.